Welcome into Words with Wallace. I'm your host, Nick Wallace, coming at you. It is Wednesday, March 20th, and as you guys can see by the title of the episode, I am joined by a very special guest, my resident Milwaukee Bucks expert from ESPN Milwaukee. I'm live with Davis Larson. Davis, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, man.
We almost had to postpone the entire podcast because we are recording this right after my Celtics nearly blew a 20-point fourth quarter lead to the Milwaukee Bucks without Giannis. So we did plan to recap this game quite a bit, and we were bummed out when Giannis wasn't available. Didn't look like it was going to be a very exciting game. Didn't look like it was going to be competitive at all for the Bucks. And then lo and behold, Davis is like, yeah, how about we start recording with like 5 minutes left? It looks like this is going to be wraps. And then the second he sends that text to me, the Bucks go on like a 10-0 run. But anyways, Davis, what did that Bucks team kind of tell you, being able to compete with the Celtics in a game like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that as I'm texting you. It's like a 16-point game. It's early fourth quarter. I'm like, let's just start this early, and Bobby Portis got it going. And I think that just kind of goes to show, Bobby's been hot. The toughness of the team, Pat Bev, and I think just what they bring to the team. And you realize the big guy's out, Giannis is out, so what's next? Who's next? And Chris Middleton's obviously on the limits restriction right now, so it's Dame time and it's Bobby time, honestly, right now. It's good to see. Like I told you before the show, I think we're pretty far back of the one seed. I don't think that's necessarily our goal. Our goal, obviously, is to get better, and Doc's joined the team, and since we've been back from All-Star game, we've shown that. So, obviously, I have no complaints. Obviously, I'm always rooting for the Bucks to get a dub, but, I'll take what I saw tonight, for sure.
Yeah, there's less implications for obviously the Bucks catching the Celtics. I mean, that's kind of a lost cause at this point. Just to set the scene a little bit, the Bucks are 44-25 after tonight's game, and they're now going to be 11 games back of the Celtics for the one seed. So realistically, the larger implications were just for the team kind of fending off the Cavs, who I think are probably within a half game of the Bucks tonight. I know the Cavs are actually probably wrapping up as we speak as well, and I'm not sure how they fared tonight. But that being said, it is going to be pretty close, and it is probably pretty important to you as a Bucks fan for the Bucks to keep that 2 seed. I think you touched upon it. I think if anything, it is a moral victory for the team, if you can call it that, for this team that beat the brakes off my Celtics a couple months ago when they faced off. How do you feel just kind of in general? I know I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but with the matchup with the Celtics specifically, is that something that you are more confident in after the effort tonight, or are you just kind of crumpling it up without Giannis?
I think a little bit of both. You like to see just fight from the guys that necessarily wouldn't even get a lot of large minutes later in the playoffs. AJ Green's in there and he's been playing super well. Obviously, I don't think we're going to be able to expect 20 plus from Bobby every game. So just seeing that fight's good. As much as I love Bobby, he's a psycho. At the end of the day, I'm a guy that's like, all right, playoffs are what matter. I obviously want to keep that 2 seed, and hopefully we'll be able to be fully healthy. And that's kind of like our season. That's been our season the last 2 years. I think the biggest thing is continuity and consistency. We haven't had that consistency with our best players, and so we're starting to see with Chris getting back, and then obviously once Chris gets back, Giannis gets hurt. So it's just one of those things, and we have to wait till the end of the season to see where we're really at.
Absolutely. And I think it's been really a roller coaster season for the Bucks. I know they've been the topic of a lot of storylines because you guys haven't had any consistency with the coaching position either. And that kind of leads me into the first question. Was obviously the Bucks took, I would say, a lot of heat, when they made the decision to move on from rookie head coach Adrian Griffin, move on to the well-known Doc Rivers, his illustrious coaching career.
Don't forget, I was a Bud fan. I was bummed when they got rid of Bud. But what are you going to do?
Exactly. And we're going to touch upon that a little bit as well, because I do think, like you said, the story starts at the end of the previous season when, of course, they did make the decision to move on from Coach Mike Budenholzer. But that being said, just in the decision to move on from Adrian Griffin, it took a lot of gusto from the front office and the ownership team, in Milwaukee, with Adrian Griffin being 30-13. And now after tonight's loss, the Bucks are 12-11 with Doc Rivers, which is obviously not a pretty record. But that being said, I know you watch the team much closer than I do.
I think Doc came in, changed some stuff. Obviously, defensively, we were horrid defensively when Griffin was in. I think we were 22nd in defense, and now we're one of the best transition defensive teams in the league. Any article, anything on Twitter will show you that. I think just behind the scenes, though, I was telling a bunch of coworkers this, and I think you can tell with the community around Milwaukee. Obviously, what we do. We work pretty close with the Bucks, and I think one of my biggest things is I think you need, if you're going to get a player like Dame, you're getting a top 10 player, arguably, 30 points a game player. If you're going to trade for someone like that to join another superstar, you need a veteran head coach. And obviously we just didn't have that. And so I think that continuity, that trust, who's Dame going to turn to in regards to coaching? and when he's looking at a rookie head coach. Like, it just honestly didn't even make sense. So I think that trust is there. I think they're just starting to believe in Doc a little bit more, and they're just starting to play together a little bit more. They're tougher. I think getting Patrick Beverly is freaking huge. Like, he's like that PJ Tucker at that championship team. So better vibes around the community. Doc's a Marquette guy, so he's been around the Milwaukee community. So just more trust within the team and the community overall compared to Griffin.
Yeah, and I was on record of saying that, like, look, I understand the move wasn't pretty, and it's always difficult to justify moving on from somebody that had a lot of success. I mean, the Bucks were the 2 seed, right where they are now when they moved on from Adrian Griffin, and if anything, the record was a little bit better. But that being said, I was in this situation as a Celtics fan last year. You know, I felt like we had a team that was ready to compete for an NBA title. And, you know, there's a scandal that happens right before the season. We lose the head coach that brought us to the NBA Finals in his first season. And then all of a sudden we have Joe Mazzulla in there. And it looked like there were some question marks with the rotation, some of the late game decisions. And it's like you have this team that's like a Ferrari, and it feels like you have like a 16-year-old driving it. And that's could be taken as disrespect to Joe Mazzulla. But, like, you have to imagine, like, the learning curve for any job in somebody's first year is insane.
Look at David Blatt for the Cavs, too. I mean, like, he had a lot of coaching experience overseas, but, like, you're coming in to coach LeBron, you know, like, you did really well your first season, boom, you're done. They win the finals the next year. It's just like, it's one of those things. And I think, like, no matter who the coach, like, even if Griffin coached the rest of the year, I think that the Bucks still would have had over like 55 wins, arguably, or close to. But I think it was like kind of the icing on the cake. What will Doc be able to do beyond the regular season? I think will show up compared to Griffin. I think the regular season, like, Giannis was still going to average 30, Dame was still going to get his numbers, but I think how hard they play and just like defensive mindset's just completely different. So
Yeah.
like, they're talented enough, they're going to win games. Like, look who's on their team, you know?
And I was always on record of saying, like, look, I didn't really care who the head coach was. Like, as a Celtics fan, my biggest fear
Yeah, 100%.
coming out of the East is still going to be the Bucks. It didn't matter if it was Adrian Griffin. Now, I think that from what, you know, mutual sources that we have that are shared with me, that, look, the confidence in Coach Adrian Griffin was gone, and at that point it was kind of a sunk ship. Like, you have to move on, and I do kind of respect the front office for making that tough decision and taking, you know, the shit that they did publicly from the media in late January.
They're paying 3 coaches too. Like, the risk that they're taking in regards to, like, they're paying Bud, Griffin, and now Doc. Like, but hey, I mean, I think in regards to the community, though, the community's like, they're gathering around the Bucks a little more. There's a little more hype, so I think it's definitely worth it.
From what I've seen, I just think that it's night and day, even between like the first 5 and 10 games with Doc, rather than like the last 10. Like, I think you can, you know, it's impossible for a team to a coach to take over a team in the middle of the season and immediately have the rotations down pat, immediately have some of the philosophy down pat. But I don't know if this kind of matches my eye test, but I wanted to kind of confirm with you. I do feel like there is more of that 2-man game between Dame and Giannis. It felt like they were 2 strangers in a pickup game, even when the team had moderate success earlier in the season. And now there's like more of a concerted effort from like a schematic standpoint to get both of those guys involved in pick and rolls and different offensive sets. Defensively, I don't think Doc reinvented the wheel, but it does look a lot closer to the Bucks teams that we've seen over the past 5 years. Is that something that you've kind of seen as well?
Yeah, I think it's just like one of those things where, like, Doc kind of comes in, gives them a reality check, and they just kind of start working harder. Like, rotations are basically all effort, you know, like, defensive, like, there's schematics, there's like giving people different looks, there's scouting reports, whatever, but it's like, dude, are you gonna freaking, like, you gotta slap the floor, you gotta stop your guy. Like, that's how it is. And so I think we're starting to see that a little bit more. I think it's also hard for just to judge, like, and I think this kind of goes to show how good of a job Doc's, like, he came in right before All-Star break, so right before trade deadline. They made the moves they needed to make, especially, like, I think Beverly is, like, one of the biggest pickups. I don't even know if he's averaging 10 points a game. Like, that's just not his game.
He did score on Luke Cornett, our 7-foot-tall backup center, and give him the too small. So that's Pat Bev.
Dude, if you remember those, if, like, the Eastern Conference Finals, like, PJ Tucker against KD, that's, like, the matchups we want Pat Bev to have. Like, those type of players. We want him to get in the heads. He's an all-effort guy. Like, dude, he's, like, as skilled as us. I wouldn't go that far, but, like, that's just, like, that's what he does. And that's what he does, and that's why he's been in the league forever. Like, he's got his niche.
Yeah, like you were getting to as well, it is difficult to isolate, like, hey, how much of control is Doc on this, and how much is, like, the differences in those little roster moves that they made around the deadline, and, like, getting a buyout guy like Gallinari that's helped play minutes. Like, it is slightly different team, like, kind of around the fringes, but in general, I think, again, even though the records that kind of set you up there, you know, suggesting that Griffin has basically as many losses as Doc does, but still, I do think it looks a little bit better. And as a Celtics fan, I definitely respect a front office that's willing to again, move on and recognize like, hey, if the guys in the locker room don't believe that they have a leader at the helm that's going to get over the hump, we know that the expectation for this team is championship or bust.
I think it's just tough. Like, if you think about, like, we have a superstar coming to join another superstar. Obviously, there's going to be some issues. Like, who's going to get shots? Dame's shooting 3 less shots on average than he was last year.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, there's going to be, like, all right, who's going to take over the end of the game? And I think Dame's finally solidified, like, that's going to be me. Like, and I think Giannis is okay with that, too. But I think just like sharing, like, when are the right shots, when is the right time to take over, like all those things are hard to figure out. And that almost takes like sometimes the whole season. Like, look at some of these big 3 teams, like, other than like the Celtics, like, look at LeBron's teams. They didn't figure it out like right away.
And that's why when a team like Phoenix comes together at the deadline last season and they acquire a guy like Kevin Durant,
hell, dude?
Yeah, nobody really expected them, or I certainly didn't. Like, look, I understand the talent was there and they gave Denver a real scare and arguably, played them closer than any other team. But at the same time, there's just no precedent for a team coming together middle of the season and finding a way to compete that same year. So at least the Bucks decided to make, as far as their roster changes, the real shakeup of acquiring a guy in Damian Lillard in the offseason where, look, I think each and every week they are building that cohesiveness. Hopefully there's an opportunity for this team to have, their quote unquote big 3 ready to go for at least a couple weeks heading into April. That could be a big difference with Doc at the helm. But the headline is Dame, right? Because I wanted to ask you mainly about how the Milwaukee community does feel about Damian Lillard. I mean, a guy that's putting up, 24, 7, and 4 isn't impressive for Damian Lillard. Like, when you think about the superstar player that he was in Portland for over a decade. And obviously all the stats and percentages are down from last year with the exception of like free throw percentage. But, how do you feel about watching a team that now has another, real offensive threat? And how does the community feel about Dame as a whole?
I mean, I was upset with Dame early on the season because he was losing me some money. But, and I think that, like, it took me a while to, like, get used to Dame, like, having a point guard as electric as him, just on the Bucks. Like, the thing that you can compare it to is just Drew Holiday, and they're just completely different players. So it's just, like, weird seeing that, and I think that was a shock to the communities, like, too. But, like, he didn't start off the season well. He's not shooting a great, like, 3-point percentage. I think he's, like, just around 35%, which I think previous seasons he's more around like the 38 range. I mean, he takes tough shots and deep shots, so like obviously you can't expect him to get over that 40 mark. I think it's just like it's exciting, and I think like obviously with the mix in, like we talked about earlier, like with the mix with Doc, like there's some just scary things. Like we see flashes, Dame hitting game winners. Like it's just different. We haven't had anything like that before, so it's just like the records are similar. Like we're obviously second in the East, but it's just like more electric, and I think more people are excited. Like, obviously, Giannis is always exciting, but, like, I'm more excited to watch Dame than Giannis. I've also seen Giannis play a million times. Dame's game is complete,
At least on the offensive end of the court, anyway. I think I understand what you're saying, too, and in my opinion, just looking at it, it definitely raises the ceiling of the Milwaukee team having Dame in place of that Drew Holiday spot. I mean, what's really nice, too, is you have this precedent. For me, obviously, Denver's still the standard. I think they are still the team to beat, despite how good my Celtics have looked. And when you look at, like, what they can do at the end of games with just a genuinely unstoppable 2-man action with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, like to have an ability to actually mimic and rival what those two guys can do, like I just don't know if the ceiling was really there. Obviously the Bucks got over the hill in what was that, 2021, when they won the title, without that traditional ball dominant guard at the end of games. But I do think the league has even changed a little bit just in the past few years. So for them to be able to look at what Denver's doing, I think that kind of has to go into play. And it definitely raises the offensive ceiling of the team. But I think as a whole, you could make the argument that adding Dame in the mix, when it looks bad defensively and they look like they can't stop a soul out there, and at the start of the year, Malik Beasley, their perimeter stopper, I think you'd also make the argument it lowers the floor of the team as well.
Like one of the things too, like the last couple of years with like Chris getting injured in the playoffs and just like him coming back, I think we were asking Drew to do too much. Like Drew naturally isn't a second scorer on a championship team. He's like that third, like 3.5 essentially, like that option. And I think like last year, like we struggled so much. Like he was asked to do more than he's like not capable, but like he's guarding the best player, and then on top of that, like you're asking him to score 20 points a game. Like what are we doing? Like, that's just setting us up for failure almost. So I think Colin Cowherd talked about, like, how Jamal Murray and Jokic are the best duo in the NBA. What do you think about that?
I think it's a no-brainer.
He had Shea and Chet, like, before Giannis and Dame. Well, like, what a psychopath, though.
Like, he's obviously clickbaiting. So if he did land on Jokic and Murray as number one, I think that's the right answer. I don't really know how you argue with that.
Even with Murray not making an All-Star game?
Yeah, see, that's just more of like an afterthought. I think that's going to be obviously a footnote when you kind of look at his career as a whole. And not to totally derail what we're talking about.
He's like one of those guys where it's like he's not going to make the Hall of Fame because like just like a fluke. Like he won't make those All-Star games because Jokic is just so dominant. And like there's so many good freaking point guards. Like look at you had Curry, and before you had Dame in the West too. And
I mean, I know that Murray got banged up as well this year, but I think even if he was healthy, I don't think he had the case to be made. Like De'Aaron Fox didn't make the All-Star team. Like that's absurd. Like he was averaging nearly 30 points a game at the time of the All-Star season. I think it is obviously Jokic and Murray is that standard, but now Milwaukee has obviously a two-man game that can rival that. And I think just more importantly, getting into like the big picture stuff with this team, right? We've discussed how, some of the team, in addition to obviously the headliner being the coaching change, and then of course, the Dame and Drew swap in the offseason, but you had some fringe changes as well, right? I mean, you can kind of fill in and make a one-to-one comparison to the guys you had in the roster last year. Like, you have Malik Beasley in the Grayson Allen spot. You got Gallinari in the Joe Ingles spot. You got Pat Bev in the Javon Carter spot. Like, I think that stuff is kind of like a net neutral altogether. Like, maybe you would argue differently. But do you genuinely believe when you look at the body of work from the Bucks team this season, the roster changes and the coaching changes, do you think that this team is in a better position to win the NBA title this year than they were last year?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. There's a lot of factors that have to go into it. I think last year, everyone thought we had a really good chance to win it too, but like injuries plagued us obviously, and we get bounced. I don't know. I just don't think we've seen the firepower like we have this year. Dame can get off for 40 anytime he wants and shoot all over the floor, and I think that's going to spread everything out where we weren't able to do that before. Going back to the Doc Rivers, like I think earlier in the season we were playing Marjon Beauchamp and we were playing Andrew Jackson. Is that his name? Like I'm a Bucks fan. I don't even.
Yeah.
Andre, the kid from UConn, like he stinks. He stinks.
Don't tell Ty that.
Like they're not playing him much anymore. Like AJ Green's getting ticked. There's a really good rhythm to the team. So I think at like one point in terms of just like spirit, energy, like I think we're able to do just way more than we were last year. Just in terms of like on the floor, spreading the ball, like high ball stream. Dame's able to drive, pull up from three, drive, kick, spreading the floor like he normally does. So it's like the same, but it's just a little more spread. Like Jay Crowder's coming back a little more. He needs to get in better shape. But I think just the personnel we have is just like more mature, I think, and just like suits the team. And it just took a while to figure that out. And it took Doc to figure that out.
I mean, I agree. I think the talent on this Bucks team, again, the best version of it. Like, again, I'm kind of giving you guys the benefit of the doubt just because, like you've touched on, we haven't really seen all three of these guys really healthy and firing with the current rotation and coaching staff.
That's my biggest fear is just how is that going to look? Because I think there's a point when like players are hurt, the team gets used to not playing with them, and they kind of find their own identity. And then like, all right, how do you fit in this person who averages 20 a game back into the lineup? So it's just so everything shifts. So that's always just like a unique spot.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the benefit of the doubt goes to the Bucks in that situation, the guys in that locker room, because again, I didn't double check the numbers on this, but I feel like you guys have been the oldest team in the NBA for like 3 straight years now. So I think those guys understand more than most teams. Like I don't think a guy like AJ Green is going to take it personally when you just, cut his minutes back to like maybe 6 minutes a game come April, May. But that being said, even though the team is more talented, I kind of question and would probably disagree with the fact that they're in a better position to win the title. I think they still have obviously a great shot, as good as any team in the East not named Boston. But I do think, not to be too biased here, with my Celtics looking a lot better and a lot more proven with some of the edge pieces and some of the rotation guys than what the Celtics did last year. I think with the Celtics getting better, the Nuggets, I think, are even stronger, even with losing Bruce Brown, because now we understand that team knows what it takes to win the title. Phoenix, other teams in the West that look a little bit stronger. I just think the bar, like I felt like last year, was just wide open, and obviously injuries struck for the Bucks. But do you feel like it's just going to be a tougher road for that team to make it, even though the team might be more talented?
Yeah, I go back, like, obviously pressure. Like, it's like, pressure's a privilege. Like, if you're the best, you have pressure, but I think there's a little less pressure on the Bucks this year, just with, like, obviously there's been a lot of media and, like, everything going on, but, like, there's been injuries. Boston's killing the East. So, like, obviously, like, kind of all the eyes are going to be on them. Like, is Jason Tatum finally going to do it? Is Jaylen Brown finally going to be able to, like, get over that hump? So where the Bucks can kind of, like, sneak in. Because, like, at this point, the 76ers right now are kind of an afterthought with Embiid out. Cleveland, I'm not scared of them. Like, I'm not scared of them. I think it's literally just, like, us two. And so I think all, like, the pressure will be on Tatum. And we'll see if Tatum can handle that.
I agree. I mean, I feel good about the Milwaukee matchup as a whole with the changes that we've made.
The Celtics, I think the Porzingis trade was huge. Like, Horford's going to give you, like, whatever Horford normally does. He's super consistent. Hauser's been playing really well. He's kind of giving you 7 to 8 points off the bench. Like, you got to respect whatever he does.
Wisconsin legend. Didn't have him out there tonight. Really hurt us.
He kicked my ass in high school. Like, I'm not hating on Drew when I say, like, Dame's better, but, like, Drew's that glue guy. He can fit in anywhere.
I think that the difference between what you guys had to ask of Drew Holiday and the fit for his team last year compared to what he does for the Celtics, I think it's what you touched upon. Like Drew being that, third, fourth option on like a championship winning team, at least on the offensive end of the court. Well, that's perfect because that's exactly what the Celtics are asking him to do. So I think we had that destiny last year. If you had asked me going into the playoffs who was going to meet in the Eastern Conference Finals, I was absolutely shocked and felt like it was really wide open for the Celtics when obviously the Bucks fell short against the Heat in round one, just for the Celtics to suffer the same fate. But we'll be watching. It's going to be close either way. I do think those are the two teams levitating above the rest. And that next matchup for the Bucks and the Celtics in April as well. April 9th. We'll see. I think the Celtics might be resting guys at that point, or it could have a real playoff atmosphere. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I'm curious what we're going to be at, too. Like, we'll see. I mean, who's healthy if, we're going to start resting Dame, too, because he's been playing so many He plays, like, the whole first quarter. Honestly, if you're betting, bet his first quarter over total points. It hits... I don't obviously know the percentage, but it hits majority of the time because he plays the whole first quarter. It's unbelievable. Picks by Dave. At one point, you got to, like, rest Dame a little bit because he's getting older. He's played so many minutes, obviously.
I think he's already surpassed, like, his game total than what he did, like, the previous few years. So you've had, like, a really, again, knock on wood, healthy season for Dame this year. So the fact that it looks like he's on track to play, like, 75 plus games for you guys. I mean, again, when we meet in April again, it's very obvious that you guys are going to need it a lot more than we do. So it'll be interesting to see if the Celtics are the ones missing some stars in that game. But I'll be looking forward to it either way. Always fun when we play the Bucks. Well, I did just want to go through this exercise. I figured this was going to be fun because I haven't mentioned this to my listeners yet, but I was able to make it in the building for the Mavericks-Nuggets game on Sunday, a couple days ago at this point at the time of recording, in which, of course...
Really?
Yeah, man, I was in the building for that. It was unbelievable.
Dude, what? I'm so jealous.
My family and I, my girlfriend, we all got like last-second tickets for like $80 each. And I mean, it was up there, but we had decent seats. And just for them to obviously... Denver, one of like the worst Jokic games of the entire season. But of course, the highlight was Kyrie hitting definitely the best game-winning shot I've ever been in person for, at least on the NBA side of things.
Offhand.
And so, yeah, left hand, going to his left over Jokic was just unbelievable. Random tidbit here, but I did have the opportunity to see Kyrie play when I was in high school, right? It was like this national tournament. It's called the Hoop Hall Classic in Springfield, Massachusetts every year. And at the end of the game, Kyrie was one of the top-ranked prospects. He gets fouled going to the basket, with like 2 seconds left, and his team's down by 2. Kyrie goes to the line and bricks both free throws. And I'm like... on my grave, I'm like, Kyrie Irving is not clutch. Like, I told that to, like, everybody. I'm like, this guy's going to make it to the league, and he's not going to be clutch.
The nation, this kid's ass.
Yeah, I was hating on him so bad. And then, of course, he hits, obviously that's not the greatest shot Kyrie's hit. You got to think back to the 2016 finals for that. But as I was watching that shot in person...
I think he's also, like, the most intriguing NBA player. Like, I can't tell if he's, like, fallen off or he's just, like... under the radar. It's just such a unique position he's in. Like, he's not talked about. Where Kyrie was in 2016 and, like, all the hype he made in 2017, 2018, it's just like, dude, people aren't really talking about him as much. I love his game. Like, he's like one of the most skilled NBA players of all time.
Absolutely. And I think he really showcased that on Sunday as well when I was there. But more importantly, it's like, this is probably the most normal Kyrie season we've had in probably since around like 2016, 2017. I guess his first year with the Celtics was pretty solid. But that being said, like, it's been a while between the vaccines and everything like that and the mandates surrounding it. And then obviously his time in Brooklyn having to get out of there. That being said, as I was watching that shot, it definitely got my wheels turning for, like, if we were to have a draft and select NBA stars that we would want on your favorite team with the ball in their hands at the end of a close game, who would you pick? Who is on that short list? We're going to do a little bit of a snake draft here, Davis. I am going to kick it over to you as the guest, so you're going to get the honorary first pick in this exercise. Who comes to mind when you think about the most clutch players you would want in that situation in the NBA right now?
Yeah, that's tough. I was kind of like battling with this because, like, all in all, to be honest, I'm a huge LeBron guy, but it's just like, I don't know, at this point in age, if I'm combining like who my favorite players are currently and like clutch, I don't know. I think I'd have to go Luka number 1. And that might be like a weird pick, but
he was on the top of my board.
Some of his shots too. Was he number 1?
Number 1 for me, dude. Top of my board. He has the step back 3. He has like a signature shot he can go to from any distance. He gets to the mid range. Guys bounce off him. It's kind of a no-brainer. But now that Luka's off the board, kicking over to me for pick number 2 here, I would actually go with SGA. I think it's a bit of a hot take because he's so young.
That's not a hot take. I had him up there too. Like,
yeah.
He is so unique, dude. He's such a unique player. And I wish he got more, like, media hype. And maybe it's just, like, maybe I'm missing stuff, but, like, I follow everything. Like, and maybe it's just because, like, he needs to win something to actually like solidify something, or actually win an MVP. But he like definitely is up. That dude's amazing. Like he does everything. He's just like he reminds me of Giannis. Like he does everything for their team.
And
Like,
I feel like just at the end of games, with his ability to get to any spot on the floor, it just seems like it's really effortless with some of the angles he takes. And again, what's kind of sneaky is because he only shoots like 2 threes a game. I feel like he's not really talked about.
I know.
As an elite three-point shooter.
I always look at stats every game, and I look at a Thunder game. It's like, how does Shea have 35 points and he only made 1 3, and he only shot like, 2, and he only shot 2.
And he has a good step back 3 though. Like it's still a really consistent shot that people are so concerned with the drive, especially by the time the fourth quarter rolls around. It does seem like he leans on like the 3-point shot a little bit more to close games because teams are just so exhausted from walling him up all game. So he's my pick at number 2, but I am curious to see who you go to next at number 3 here.
I'm probably got to go with the greatest shooter of all time, and that's Steph. I mean, some of the biggest shots he's hit, and like, you just can't not have him.
Probably going to win the clutch award this season. I love Steph. He was on my board as well. I definitely was going to take him if you didn't.
But like, it's the same thing. Like, ball handler can kind of get to wherever. If he needs to get by a bigger guy, he can. If he needs to have a step back on a big, like he can get a shot off whenever, which is crazy to think because he's only 6'3".
Yeah, and people don't ever talk about his ability to finish as one of the best finishers in the entire NBA, and that's clearly what he's been over the past several years. And it actually feels like that part of his game is better than it's even when he was at his peak, quote unquote peak, when he was winning MVPs in 15 and 16. Like I feel like his ability to get to his spots around the basket is even better now than it was back then. So that's a great pick. Moving on, Steph's off the board here. Luka, SGA off the board. I'm going to have to go to KD with my next pick, man. I know he's probably one of the few exceptions for the non-guards in this list, dude. But, like, I don't think I need to explain it too much, bro. A 7-footer with a pull-up jumper like that, you basically know the look that he's going to get, and he can do it from really any distance. I would love to have Kevin Durant in any end-of-game situation, even to this day. So that's my pick there.
Do you think this season for KD and the Suns is just going to be, like, I think, what are they in the play-in right now? It's just been, like, surprising. I know they've had some, like, weird injuries with, like, Beal's been in and out the whole season, but, like, dude, you have Book, KD, Grayson Allen is arguably the best shooter in the NBA right now. Don't quote me on that, but, like, I think he's arguably, like, he might have the best percentage in the league.
He's up there. Maybe that difference is Grayson Allen and Malik Beasley is just really the low light for the Bucks this season. But, no, he's been up there. I don't know. I can't say I'm terribly surprised with Phoenix just because they don't really strike me as a regular season team just because they do have so many guys that are like injury question marks. Like I kind of penciled in Bradley Beal to miss like 20 games mentally before the season started. I kind of assumed the same of Durant, even though he's been pretty healthy for the team. So, I mean, that being said, I just didn't love like any of the ancillary pieces around their big three. Like I felt like they really were super thin besides like the Eric Gordon signing. Like I didn't love Nurkic, but I feel like that Ayton deal's actually worked out. So there was just some team that was going to fall on the standings. But frankly, as long as the Suns are in the playoffs, which it looks like they will be, I just think they just need to avoid the play-in race where Golden State and LA are currently. I think they'll be just fine, and no team is going to want to play them in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, like, dude, if you look at the standings right now, Dallas 7, Phoenix is 8, Lakers 9, and Warriors are 10. Like, that's insane.
All ESPN can talk about right now, I feel like, is that play-in race between Golden State and LA. It seems like where we're headed, which is insane to think about that. Just one of those teams is going to be bounced in the first play-in games. But who knows? I mean, maybe one of these teams slides, but I just don't know who it's going to be at the bottom there. Like, I just think it is what it's going to be at this point. But interested to hear where you go now that I took KD off the board this draft.
This is going to be a hot take, and I don't know if you know this about me, but he's one of my all-time favorite players. And I feel the only time people really hear about him is obviously if they're watching highlights from the night before or they're watching TV and they see a New Balance commercial, because I'm going Kawhi. I love Kawhi. His game is so simple. Like, talk about a guy who just grinded when he came in the NBA, couldn't shoot. Now he has handles on a string, pull-up jumper, 3. Clutch, obviously, he's 2-time NBA champ, NBA Finals MVP. Like, I think he's just one of those guys that doesn't get talked about because he's not loud in the media. But, like, dude, he's clutch as hell.
And I think it's so funny that his mid-range game is on that short list of best in the entire league at this point in time, which is funny to think about because, again, that just was not a part of the profile in those early San Antonio years, and now it really has become a staple of his game. I know it doesn't always look as flashy, so I kind of hesitated from putting him on this list. But, again, if in terms of, like, effective and getting to that shot, I really do, for the sake of this exercise, lean toward folks that can score at all 3 levels, and I think Kawhi's on that short list for sure.
Yeah,
so
I think you kind of hit on the nose too. Like, I think he kind of goes, I don't want to say forgotten because like he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer easy, but like he's not flashy, he's not loud. Like his game is simple, Like, he makes a move, he has to make another one, he will. But if he doesn't, he'll just go to the rim. Like, it's just one of those things. He doesn't overcomplicate things, which a lot of NBA players do, where they make like they'll make like a crazy pull up jumper shot where it's like you made a move that you like didn't have to do, but you made it anyway, and it just like looked way cooler. But like Kawhi's just like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna pull up, and he's gonna make it and not say anything.
Kawhi's a dog, man. Especially if we're looking at the other end of the court, he's on that short list as well. But bringing it back for my last pick of this exercise, I'm kind of surprised this guy's on the board. I kind of have to do it just out of respect with this guy being the best player in the world, in my opinion. I am gonna take Jokic for the sake of this exercise. And I know for like traditional hoopers, like again, we are talking about isolation situation. I'm not allowing anybody to make a kick out pass. I want them to take that bad shot that everyone talks about on first take the next morning. I still think you have to consider Jokic because the Sombor shuffle or whatever you want to call it, when he's like literally moving backwards, shooting it above his head. He's 7 feet tall, and that shot gets off. It seems like he literally gets bounces that no other player in the entire league would ever get. Like, he's just repeatedly blessed on these attempts, and the bigger the game, the more likely a shot like that's going to drop. Like, even when he hit that like 35-footer to beat Golden State at the buzzer earlier this season, and he had a couple ridiculous ones in the most recent match against the Celtics. I'm taking Jokic because, again, if he wants to get a bucket, and I know that's not always his game, you still have to put him on that short list of guys you'd want in that situation.
I don't think you could name an unguardable shot like his. Like, the only other person in the league you can ever think of, like, in history is probably Dirk. Realistically. Dirk. Isolation, Kareem. Like, similar player, not super mobile, like, but, like, they'll just, like, the shot is literally unguardable. Fuck yeah, I agree with that.
He doesn't go to it as much as he
two-time MVP,
could.
So it's like, the unique thing about Jokic, too, is, like, he could probably do that every single time. But on top of that, instead of, like, shooting 25 times, he'll shoot 18, and then he'll have 12 assists.
And it's just fascinating to see, like, what his mindset is before games. Like, he'll play, like, a shit team like the Wizards, and he's like, all right, I'm just not going to shoot this game. And I'm going to see, like, how long into the game I'm going to go before I even have to, like, consider taking a shot attempt before they stop respecting me. And then other games, like, when he played the Celtics the other night, he was, like, had something out against Kristaps. Like, I don't know if it's, some European connection there, but he's like, I'm going to put my shoulder into his chest and drive him below the basket on any opportunity he could. And he killed us. We couldn't stop him. So it is fascinating to see, like, when he does flip that switch, it's like he has that level to his game as well.
I think, like, the only other player that I was able to see it where it's, like, is honestly LeBron. Where, like, LeBron, like, previously in his career, and I think he probably still does it, where, like, the first quarter is always like, all right, how can I get everyone involved? Like, let me, like, just, I'm not going to force anything. I'm just, like, going to go with the pace of the game, get my guys going. And Jokic is, like, kind of similar, where it's like, all right, I need everyone to touch it, get everyone involved. And it's like, all right, if I need to go get a bucket, I'll go get a fucking bucket. He's so fun to watch. There's nothing like a big, like, fat white dude. Like, I wouldn't say he's fat, but, like, just, like, a pudgy white dude just killing, bro.
It was just funny, like, zoom out and look at big picture. My girlfriend had a friend over a couple weekends ago, and so I was watching a Nuggets game while, like, they were hanging out, trying not to, like, totally kill the vibe for them, but I was, like, super locked into the game. And, this girl, she's not a basketball fan. She doesn't watch much hoop. Like, she's familiar with some of the big names in the NBA. And naturally, Nuggets find a way to pull off a win. Jokic is getting the post-game interview. And I'm like, Katie, like, do you know who this guy is? And she's like, I've never seen that man before in my life. I was like, you are looking at, in my opinion and the opinion of many others, the best basketball player in the world. And she, like, 100% thought I was totally fucking with her because there's no way you would ever think that the best basketball player in the world looks like that. But that's the beauty of it. That's why it took so long for the league to catch on. That exercise was great, man, just to bring it back. Davis with his first pick took Luka, second pick Steph, finally rounded things out with Kawhi. I got SGA with my first pick, followed by Katie and Jokic. So you guys have to let us know. You know where to find out Words with Wallace to let the people know what team you like better in that end-of-game scenario. Before I let you go, Davis, I couldn't help but see, I've been on Twitter the past couple days. I see our friends at ESPN Milwaukee have been promoting Thanasis and his podcast, Thanalysis, live show.
Thanalysis, yeah.
Friday at Potawatomi Casino. Is that where it's going to be?
Wait, can you try to pronounce that again? Because that was absolutely hilarious. You're like one of those guys, if you ever go to a Bucks game, if any of these people are from Wisconsin, the Bucks players will try to pronounce the Wisconsin cities, and you trying to pronounce Potawatomi was insane.
Yeah. I tried to
you butchered the hell out of that, dude.
Potawatomi? Okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. I do have it written out in all caps, so I could do it. But that's Potto? That's the spot that
That's the famous Potto. That's the famous Potto. There's rumors Stephen A. will be there.
That's what I was looking for. I was like, what's going to be...
I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that. I don't know if I'm allowed to break the news.
But that being said, again, Thanalysis, League Pass Darling. having his own podcast called Analysis with special guest Giannis on Friday. So that's going to be awesome. So Davis is going to be in the building for that, I take it, right?
I'll be working. I'll be checking in tickets. Some bitch work, but happy to be there. Probably once the event starts, I'll probably be playing some blackjack. So
perfect. That's going to be awesome. Well, I just wanted to give a quick tease and a free plug for that as well. Well, Davis, thanks for coming on, man. Anything else you want to tell the Words with Wallace listeners before we sign off here?
Nah, man, I appreciate you having me on. I hope I can get on here again sometime, shoot the shit. It doesn't even have to be about Bucks, you're one of my guys, so have me on anytime. I'm happy to be on.
Yeah, man. We'll have to bring you into dog days this summer, too. Do some off-season content, get into some debates, and maybe even sooner than that if the Celtics meet the Bucks in the playoffs, because that's going to be a lot of fun.
That's what I'm hoping for. I mean, I think that's what everyone's hoping for at this point.
Thanks again to Davis for his time. And before I let you guys go, be sure to follow @WordsWithWallace on everything that includes Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Be sure to follow the show there. And I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.